Warning, this show contains adult language. Welcome to another edition of Up and In It. I'm your host, Adrian Babashoff, and if you're new here, welcome as well. And if you're wondering what the show is about, it's entirely dedicated to improving quality of life for both people and planet through liberation and independence, moving you from surviving to thriving and living life on your own terms. And what better way to move from surviving to thriving than to start growing your own food? Today's episode 273, and it's vegetable production from small to medium. And I suspect that we're going to have a lot of information needed. So this is actually part one, and we're basically going to take the ABCs. You know, you want to start growing your own food. I think you definitely should, because of these strange end times. It's like uncertainty is in everything. Food supply chain shortages and just everything's up in arms. But you know, besides all of that, I actually spin farm off somebody else's property, meaning I grow food on their property in exchange for the use because I don't have my own land. And yesterday, I gave them this really cool fruit called a pineapple ground cherry. It's in the tomatillo family, but it's little tiny little cherries, and they're ripe when they fall on the ground. They're yellow, and they're very delicious. And the owner came and told me that it's just night and day. She says the tomatoes are like night and day. The flavor of the food that's coming out of that we're producing out of that garden is just absolutely stunning. Like, you can't even get it. She says it even tastes better than the farmers markets, right? So because you're picking at its ultimate ripeness, right? And the nutritional value and all these things you have control over. Excuse the background noise. That's my F360 7.3 liter pickup truck. We're on our commute. So yeah, I want to get you guys started, and I want to put it as simple as possible. I think even if you are gardening, you know, everybody has different methodologies and ideologies of how things are supposed to go, how things are not supposed to go. And guess what, guys? I don't know why it's turned into some sort of huge club of knowledge or like a religion where they're saying you can't this, you should always that, never this, that. Well, I've tried stuff where you're never supposed to do this and things actually work. So maybe you might get a few things out of here. So let's start off first with, you want to figure out what to grow, right? Find the species you like at the grocery store first is my first note here. And the reason I'm saying this is that if you go through all the trouble, money, expense, and time, you know, and work and all that, you're going to find out that maybe you grow stuff you've never grown before and go, I don't really care for that. I want to say a word on flavor, though, first here, too, because a lot of things, what I just said is that when you go to the grocery store and you take things like endive, for instance, or what was some of the things I never thought I'd like turnips, right? You go to buy a turnip, it doesn't taste like anything. It just tastes like a piece of cardboard, a wet piece of cardboard. But when you grow them in your own soil, such as I do, rich with worm castings and things, they actually have the sweetness. And I never thought I would love turnips, but I love them. So don't go to the grocery store and just solely go off of that to where it's like, oh, well, that tasted like shit, so I'm not going to grow it, right? Give everything a chance, but do it in moderation. But I think that my next note here is to preserve or not to preserve. So very easily, go buy yourself some stuff, especially things that are on sale. Farmers markets and things like that, if you get to know them, they actually have produce that starts to turn, you know, like tomatoes and things like that. They just start to get soft. They're not sour, they're not bad. They're just not very marketable, and they actually need to be processed or done with something the next few days, otherwise they are going to turn bad. So you can say, get yourself some tomatoes and go make yourself some tomato sauce or stewed tomatoes, stuff like that. You can go down and get this for pennies on the dollar and try your hand at preserving. Figure out if this is something that you want to do first before you embark on growing lots of food, especially for sustainability and resiliency. Get your hands wet, your feet wet, I mean. So yeah, you need to figure out what to grow. I think on the other thing of just beyond flavor is that, are you actually going to eat all of these vegetables that you're growing? So it's a shame, you know, to spend all the money on water and all these type of things to grow a bunch of food, and then you're throwing a bunch of stuff away, right? We got some solutions for all that, but you know, try practicing eating what you think you want. Because what you think you want, it's going to end up where you're eating a bowl of cereals, you know, and granola and hamburgers and stuff, and you're not going to be eating all the food that you got. So practice run as far as quantity and things like that, about how much to grow, which we're going to talk about. Practice eating, introducing these vegetables in your diet. So basically what I look at is a lot of people would want to start their own garden or grow their own food so that they can produce their own food. Well, how much vegetables do you actually eat, right? So do a practice run first. Do yourself a favor before you go through all of the trouble. Let's move on next. So yeah, to preserve or not to preserve, there's drying methods, there's canning methods, there's beautiful methods where you can fire roast like bell peppers or Anaheim peppers, like chilies and stuff like that. You can peel the skin off and you can actually just set them in a jar of olive oil and they'll keep for a very long time. There's fermenting, there's all kinds of different ways to go about doing this stuff. So if you're really going to take it serious, I'd say the ABCs is learn to preserve before you even grow your food, because once it's grown and you got your harvest and everything and then you're trying to figure stuff out, it could be a pain in the butt. And I do not want people to start producing their own food and then figure out, it gets all jumbled up, they don't know what they're doing and just quit. I'd rather see you successful, so in my book anyways. When you're growing a lot of your own food, we're going to get into how much and all that, but we just want to talk about a few more things like nutritional values. So you take a few things that are completely overlooked, like the contrast of, say, kale to Swiss chard. Now, Swiss chard has much more of a milder flavor than kale, but again, grown in the right situations, both kale and Swiss chard could both be sort of sweet, but they're not really that, in my book, something that I like to eat. But if it's something that if you're like me and that's something that you don't like to eat, well, check this out. Maybe you might want to start growing things for its nutritional value. There's something like 50 or 60 different vitamins and minerals in kale and Swiss chard. Swiss chard just falls just below kale. Very high in like it says, nutrition. But the thing is that a lot less bugs have a tendency to attack and kill Swiss chard, whereas kale, they want to murder it. In my book, in my opinion as well, we have so much to share here. It all depends on the species of the plants and where they were grown. Plants hold memory, right? You grow a plant back east and try to bring it to California, just with the heat alone beyond pests, it's probably not going to do too well. But if you grow it and you save the seeds and you keep doing this year after year, it starts to acclimate to its biome, to its environment, right? So yeah, a lot of nutritional value I think you want to take a look at if you're doing this for survival or for resiliency, sustainability, and to actually get high yields of stuff. I think that you should consider eating stuff that you don't necessarily like. And here's the gist. You can take kale and you can take Swiss chard. You can take the whole entire stem of the Swiss chard. The kale, usually those stems are very, very woody. It's like bubble gum, right? You want to remove the stalk from that. But my idea is take stuff and put it in soups. And that's what I do with my greens. And actually, I try to practice somewhat of a paleo, a less carb diet to lose weight for me and my daughter. So replacing noodles with all greens. So things like mustard greens too are sometimes very spicy. But when you put them in the soup, and basically what you do is you just put chicken or beef broth, or if you're vegetarians, vegetable broth, boil these things down, and what happens is they all become very soft. Like I said, the stalks of the Swiss chard are actually quite delicious. And a lot of stuff gets mashed. So it's like this huge, massive green noodles. And then you could add potatoes or whatever you want. But just even a green soup is really delicious, right? Especially for the meat eaters with like beef broth. Put yourself some cayenne pepper, salt and pepper, and a squeeze of lemon in there, and some garlic powder and stuff like that. And you'll actually find yourself just munching this stuff down. So yeah, don't. It's very wise, I would say, for you to figure out nutritional value of what you want to grow, and also take in consideration, it is just my opinion, that a lot of these raw vegetables have a digestive enzyme in them. They have these natural things inside them to help aid digestion and things like that, and to actually float the vitamins into your bodies and the minerals. As soon as we cook them, it is in my opinion, I says in contrast to everybody has their own ideologies. So in my opinion, when you cook anything down, you kind of lose a little bit of the nutritional value, if not a lot. Although, one of the guys I love, I want to read his book, Weston A. Price. Back in the old days, what this guy did is he traveled the world and he started studying nutritional value of plants. We're going to go on a little side shoot here. And they didn't have quite the instruments. I forget if that was like the 40s or 30s or 20s or something like that. I forget his era and time. But what they did is they burned the plants down, like a kale, let's just say. And what was left was the vitamins and minerals. And then they would extract those things, and I forget the methodology of how, but that was the only way they could find out how much vitamins, how densely packed these vegetables were from different areas of the world. He was studying nutrition and why some people are healthier than others. So, little side note there I thought may be helpful. So yeah, as far as cooking them down, I think that we still have them, but maybe they're lacking a lot of the helpful digestive enzymes and the natural things. So now that we know kind of an idea, I gave you guys a little bit. And yes, there is a lot, and there's a lot of stuff I'm missing in here, but I wanted to keep it simple. And we can't turn this into a 3-hour podcast, although I wish it would, because I go on and on for you guys. But let's move on next to how to grow stuff. And one of my, if you guys listen to the intro to the show, it's improving quality of life for both people and the planet. And when it comes to food production, there's a lot of use of plastics, and it's been one of my life goals to eliminate or to eradicate as much as possible the use of plastic. Now, when we're going to start growing seeds, they usually grow in plastic containers. Guess what? It doesn't have to be that way. You can cut yourself a sheet of plywood. They have those little grow trays, which were, I think, 10 or 11 by 20 inches. And you can actually cut yourself a sheet of plywood 11 by 20 inches, and you're going to make such things as which are called a seed block. And the seed blocks are these little tiny cubes. You have like 3 different varieties. You have one that I believe is I think it's a 1 inch by 1 inch cube, and then you have a 4 by 4 inch cube, and then you have a giant 4 inch cube to make soil blocks. And basically soil blocks are made of a certain soil that you moisten up, and you get these soil block makers, and you pound the soil into them. You grind the soil, compress them into these little slots, and then it has like a little lever where you push and it expands and shoots the soil blocks out. So now you have just this block of soil. No plastic needed. Its integrity stays as long as you don't squirt the hell out of it. It's got a little dimple where you can drop your seed inside, and you set these on top of a plywood sheet, just as you would regular old plastic grow trays, and you have literally no plastic. You have just wood and soil, nothing wrapping around them. The benefit is it already puts a little dimple inside the top, as I said, so you can drop your seeds in there. The other benefit is less use of plastic, but also an air pruning technique. So meaning air pruning, that when the roots start to come out the sides of the soil, they actually will contain themselves because they get pruned by the air. They basically kind of get burned, right, with too much oxygen and air. So they'll actually stay within their the soil block. Whereas when you grow stuff in plastic, you guys ever notice you buy stuff from the hardware stores or whatever, you'll see the roots are just spun in a circle. They're trying to find a way to get out. They can't. They end up tying themselves in knots and basically choking themselves out. Whereas soil blocks help to be a lot more free for the plants and a lot more gentle. So therefore you have a healthier plant. So yeah, let's talk about seed blocking for a little bit longer here. You can buy these things. They're only like 20, 30 bucks. That's what I asked. I'm a fucking weirdo. What do you want for Christmas? A 1 inch soil block maker. So first of all, I talked about them. Let's finish with that before we go in the soil. I don't think you need the 4 inch soil block maker. It just makes one big one. You're pretty good at using the 1 inch. And once they start to sprout, you can just literally take those and put them into your container gardening if that's what you're doing. If you are growing in the ground, I would recommend that you place your 1 inch into a 4 inch cubic foot square soil block. And what happens is they actually have, when you're pressing your 1 inch, they actually have the little dimple. It's a perfect 1 inch by 1 inch square. You can purchase the 4 inch soil block maker. And what's going to happen is it's going to dimple a 1 inch by 1 inch square on top. So all you do is you press these 4 inch blocks out, you lay them next to your 1 inch, and you take that little seedling and you just basically stuff it into a 4 inch, and now you gave it that much more soil, right? So, and on that note, I guess we'll talk about storage and why, and we'll go into my other technique, my goodies I got for you guys. But yeah, so there we go. We have the sizes. Just stay from a 1 inch to a 4 inch. Once the 4 inch is established, take that and plant that in your garden beds or your raised beds or your container gardening. So the way to make the soil, I've simplified this down for my biodegradable container gardening, which you can check out at biodegradablecontainergardening.com. Not a lot on there yet. We're working on it, but there's also Biodegradable Container Gardening YouTube site. Basically what I did is I used the one soil for everything. So I've simplified this for you. So if you guys want to do container gardening or raised bed's going to be expensive, but you know, any kind of container gardening or your seed blocks, it's going to be very simple. 1 part peat moss or coconut coir, 1 part vermiculite, and 1 part compost. I prefer worm castings. That's what I use for everything. So 3 parts, that's it. Get yourself a container, I don't know, a 32-ounce container, and mix equal parts of these and then wet it down. And what you want to do is you want to kind of get it soaked to where it's like oatmeal, and just keep practicing. You know, it's very hard for me to explain everything in detail here for you, but just keep practicing with your soil block maker. You want to take your soil block maker and you want to dip it in some water. It like lubricates it so that the soil don't stick. And then you're going to shove it inside your soil. I just told you how to make your seed starting soil. And you're going to wedge up all the soil in there, and you're going to compress the soil blocks out. You're going to take and you're going to rinse the soil block maker out and then start over again. Now, if your soil blocks come out and they're laying sideways, they're melting, or they're just stuck in that means you got to add more water or add more soil and get it just right. Basically, what I like is to take the soil, squeeze it in my hand, and when a couple little drips start to come between my fingers, start to drip out, then I know that I've got the perfect mixture. So yeah, and what is the reason why you want to do soil blocks? Because if you just went to your container gardening or your garden beds and all that, and you just started sowing seeds directly, there's a good chance that a lot of them aren't going to come up. So if you're doing such things as square foot gardening, and you know that you're able to put, say, 9 plants in 1 square foot, let's just say 6 of them start and then 3 of them don't. That's wasted space, right, and time. So what's really nice about the soil blocks is that some of them you're going to notice the seeds are not going to germinate, and that way you can sort out the ones that didn't. Throw the seed ball, the extra soil block at each other, at your children's faces, you know, or you know, have a soil block fight, or just toss them in your garden, you know, if you don't want to disrupt your family and cause neurological and psychological problems for the rest of their lives by being pelted in the face with the mini soil blocks. Jokes, I guess I have to say so people don't get mad. He beats his children up with soil blocks. No, I'm fucking trying to make a goddamn fucking funny. Chill the fuck out. All right. So I think I've explained that in its entirety. So we did how much and how, or how much to sow. How? I can't even fucking speak anymore. Start turning Joe Biden, guys. I can't fucking believe it here. I'm stumbling. So yeah, how much to sow? Now, I would say if you're going from even small or to medium, you want to figure out your square footage of how much space you have, right? So pretty much per square foot, like if you just took a measuring tape and you measured out your garden bed, say if you had a 4 by 8 foot, or 4 by 4 I think is pretty standard, you can kind of get an idea through square foot gardening, which I don't have time to explain today, of how many seedlings you're going to grow just for that one planting area. Now I want to add in here too that if you came up with a number, say like 50 plants, we'll make it all even here. What you're going to want to do is double that at least, because what happens is you have pests that come in, you have a hot day, or maybe your water, you forgot to water and some stuff dried out. When you're getting close, which we are right now, this is September, almost I think the 3rd week of September of 2021, we're heading into fall, and I started late. Well, guess what? Next month to November, it's going to possibly cool down, and a lot of things aren't going to germinate. I'll give you guys another tip. Once things go below 50 degrees, 55 degrees, a lot of your plants will not germinate. Some of them will, but the biology and everything of the soil, basically, to put it simply, without getting technical here, once we start dropping down towards the 40s, and definitely down in the 30s, everything kind of takes a nap. It goes to bed. It needs rest, right? It's like, ooh, it's too cold. Everything kind of ceases to work. So you want to get as many seedlings and things grown as possible to have on standby. So grow at least double of what you think you want to sow. Now, how to store live seedlings and why? So yeah, we talked about soil blocks, and then we just talked about doubling your shit. Well, let's just say you don't put all your plants in the ground. What you're going to want to do, well, here's what I do, and here's my advice. Like I said, I'm not telling you what to do, what not to do, but what makes sense for me is I actually use these biodegradable grow bags, and they're just mini paper or some sort of cloth reuse sustainable bags. And that you can get them like 6 by 6 inch bags. You can get them 8 by 8 inch. So what you're going to do is, if your soil blocks were sitting there in the 2-inch cubes and they've been sitting there for a month, and next thing you know, all your lettuce and stuff is like, you know, 4 or 5 inches tall. Basically like when you go to Home Depot and you buy a tomato bush or cucumber or whatever, and they've got them in those little tiny 6-inch pots, you know. This is the same thing, and I want to get away from plastic and use these biodegradable grow bags, these little tiny minis, because they do just that. They will biodegrade. But it makes it very simple as well. You can take your 4-inch cube and you can upgrade it into a 6-inch cubic grow bag, right, with the exact same soil and everything else. And you have these on standby, so if something happens, you can immediately replace these. You can keep, they have, like I said, larger bags, so you can keep upgrading and upgrading until it gets to the point where maybe you can just give these plants away, you can sell them, you can turn this into a business. There's multiple ways that this can go, but you definitely want to have that backup, in my opinion. So how to store them, we said why. It opens up many possibilities. Like I said, to actually have a residual income, which is one of my plans. But how to store them is when, is in a, which I forgot to tell you guys on the soil blocks when you're sowing your seeds. This goes for both, for your auxiliary seedlings and also your starts. You want to put them by a window or on a porch, somewhere where they get some actual light, right? Where they're not just stuck in the shade. And maybe where they get just light for a few hours a day. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to come in and you're going to fill yourself up a mister bottle, like a squeezy water bottle. They got those really cool pump pressure ones. Get yourself like a gallon one. You can adjust the mist. A lot of people say don't top water. I've been top watering this entire time. That's why I said this turns into a religion or a law or a group of people. Look, I top water my soil blocks and my microgreens, by the way, and I've had 0 issues. So what you're going to want to do is every day, every morning you get up, yes, it's going to have to be a routine. You're going to want to spritz these things real good, get them nice and wet. You don't want to pour water over them and things like that. You're going to wash the soil blocks out. It's a little bit more of a pain in the ass than using plastic, but we're doing good for the environment, right, and the plants. Now, if you don't really have this time, I recommend that you build yourself a little shelf, and you can actually get these misters. I don't know if you guys have ever seen them in restaurants or in the desert, you know. They sell them at the hardware store. Very simple to operate. I've had mine for over 1.5 years, 2 years, and they're still working. But basically, you can get yourself some irrigation tubing that they use for growing, like this, the 1/2-inch stuff. Really cheap too. Probably about $100, I would say, would get you started on a fairly good size seed production. And I'm too lazy. Plus, I'm too busy. Well, I'm busy working so much that to introduce anything new in my life is very difficult. So what I do is I have mine on a timer, and I think it'd be very difficult to explain this to you. But I shop a lot of stuff at the Home Depot, and you can actually get the drip. It's called drip irrigation. The actual company is called Drip, and they have a whole manual, and they'll show you how to use a black flow preventer, a filter so that your misters don't get plugged up, a pressure regulator, and all the kind of stuff to set up. And basically, it's really, guys, so simple. All you do is take this, run it to a water hose, your timer and everything. You just wedge a hose up into this special connector, run your hose over your seedling area, and then crimp the end of the hose. So now, and then you're going to get this little hole puncher. You're just going to punch little holes, maybe like every foot. And then you literally just insert a mister, a little tip. That's it. And then turn it on, and then watch how, try to line your misters just perfect. There's these really cool misters I want to tell you guys about that have like a piece of stainless wire, stainless wire inside them, so you could actually form them, bend them, and they stay. Those are kind of nice because you could reposition them around. You can also put a shutoff valve on the end so that, if you want to get technical, so that you're not wasting water. But yeah, mine are all on a timer, so I don't even have to think. It goes off about twice a day for about a minute, and it mists very gently over the soil blocks and keeps everything, so I don't have to do nothing. Literally every day all I have to do is look to make sure that everything's not drying out, and you'll tell when things start to dry out if something's going wrong, something's plugged, or maybe the batteries are dead and the automation. So I prefer to automate everything. So guys, let's move. That's how to store them, utilizing the excess supply of food. I'm going to get you guys wet for part 2. I already told you if you grew too many seedlings, what you can do with them, give them away as gifts and stuff like that. And trust me, it brings out the human in people. As I say at the end of the show all the time, human up. It warms your heart when somebody gives you stuff and you're trading. It's way better than the dollar. And I believe this is the answer to wake people up to the true meaning of living life and being human beings and being kind to each other. You got to be dead inside to not feel good when somebody, to swap seeds and stuff like that and seedlings. So yeah, your excess supply of food, what I do, my answer is, like I said, soups. I already gave that one kind of away, a hint. Throw a bunch of stuff in soup if you got excess instead of throwing it away. Next thing you do is throw it in your compost to keep things recycling so you never waste it. And I'm talking about if you produce too much food, more than you can handle. You can also give food away or trade food, as I said. And the one thing I'd like for you guys to check out, and I ain't got time to go into here, is a thing called Bokashi. And Bokashi is basically a very simplified form of doing compost that goes into a 5-gallon bucket that does not stink. If it does stink, you've done something wrong. But it basically pickles everything. And worms love it, and I'm looking to do this on large scale one day. But yeah, Bokashi is definitely a very simple, easy way to go, and you can do this inside your kitchen, literally, inside your home. So check it out, Bokashi. I believe it's spelled B-U-K-A-S-H-I. And we're waiting to do a show on it soon here. I just need to know from you guys. You guys know what to do. All the information's down below. Message me, let me know what you guys want to hear about. So part 2, container gardening, I want to talk about container gardening and why. And I'm just going to give you guys just a little hint here. Container gardening, for those of you, like I said, are busy. You can literally move your container, put it in the garage. I have things such as Anaheim peppers, bell peppers, what's the other one here? The jalapenos. These things are over 2 years old. And because I move the container into the greenhouse every year and keep them on water and literally just chop off all the leaves and everything and just decapitate it, just cut everything off and leave just like a 1-foot stick. What's going to happen is once it gets cold, and wait till it gets cold to do these things, right? That's why container gardening is what I prefer. It's mobile. You're able to move it around. It's like Jenga, like a puzzle. You can do anything you want, right? You can move, if something's sick, you can move it and replace it with something immediately. So very convenient. Just a little bit more of a initial startup of cost. But yeah, take these things and you'll know that when they start dropping their leaves, cut all the leaves off and everything, and that's when they're going to start going dormant. Usually when the temperatures start getting around 40 degrees, just cut it off. You're not going to kill it. And then next year what's going to happen is once the spring starts to form and the heat, things start to warm back up, and you place this back outside or in the heat, what's going to happen is it's just going to start offshooting all kinds of buds and arms and leaves and everything, and you're actually going to accelerate your pepper production by half. I would say, you know, that much faster than growing them from seed. So a lot of stuff you can keep, like herbs and things like that as well. And I'm so excited to talk about that one. Please let me know if you guys want me to keep going on these things. I keep trying to think, what would interest people? What do they need right now in these weird, uncertain times? How can I be of help? What are the things I know, and how can I inspire people to know that we're not fucked and that there's a lot of shit we can do to improve our own lives, improve the world around us, and make this into a Garden of Eden again and turn this into the best time to ever be alive. That's my fucking goal, man. Complete domination of yummy goodness. Anyways, guys, that's the show. You guys know what to do. There's information if you want more goodies, everything below. So as I always say, go out there and have yourself a near-life experience. Don't lose your muchness. Carry on the fire. Human up. Live it, love it, own it, and bone it, my friends.